going on YouTube? It's Steve JMO. It's the 16th of November 2018, and what you're about to be watching is pretty much a montage of how I believe the flat earth and the hollow earth connect, and how through the scriptures they are one and the same. They also connect not just only through the scriptures, but in recent history, going back just as recent as World War II down in Antarctica. The images in the first couple of minutes here while I'm introing the video are hopefully to further help you understand the flat hollow combo, if you know what I'm saying. Like, we're looking at Agartha, which would be the center of the flat earth and the hollow earth model, of course. And this is pretty much a picture I just, took off of Google real quick. Shows, like, if the flat plane, you got the shell, the great deep underneath, you have the firmament above. It's pretty simple, and it's all connected, I believe, through Antarctica. That's a whole another story, but on to the next one. We got, which looks like what I just showed you, just in a further detail of what other people may believe and may not believe. But clearly we see here, you have the earth and you have the vault of the heaven above it, which would be, as we know, the firmament in the flat earth community. And below it you got Hades and Tartarus, which in Greek mythology is where, pretty much where Satan and Apollyon are, if you connect them that far. It's just another representation of that, and of how it would look on top. They have the ocean surrounding everything, and that's what you got down low, flat hollow. So let me know what you guys think, and it should be starting any second now, and I'll intervene when I have to. Other than that, enjoy.
A once tropical paradise, Antarctica is now covered by a massive ice sheet spanning 98% of its surface. Since it had been rediscovered in 1911, this southernmost landmass became a subject of intrigue worldwide, with world superpowers showing an unprecedented desire to preserve this desolate land. 1 year after the Chinese detailed mapping of the region in 2005, NASA scientists announced their satellites had detected a huge electromagnetic anomaly buried beneath the frozen coat of ice. Preserved under the Wilkes Land Antarctic region, the gravity anomaly, as it has been dubbed, stretches for about 151 miles beneath the ice and has a depth of about 2,800 feet. So far, the best scientific hypothesis that has been put forward is that a colossal object, most probably a meteorite twice the size as the one that had wiped the dinosaurs millions of years ago, is sitting in the middle of a 300 miles wide impact crater. This is to say, a bold and hard to prove idea, yet it's enough to comfort those seeking the best scientific explanation. For those of you not relying on NASA for a straight answer, we have a different story to tell. A meaningful story that had been kept away from us for thousands and thousands of years. Here's what they don't want us to know. This year, on March 14, an intricate article was published by Israeli News Live entitled "The Fallen Angels Imprisoned in Antarctica and Are Still Alive." Commentator Steve Ben Nunn shared some intriguing passages from the Forbidden Book of Enoch, which, believe it or not, subtly refers to Antarctica as the land where the fallen angels had been imprisoned by God in remote times.
Something that I discovered recently written in the book of Enoch, and we're going to even be looking at some articles that have been considered, well, some might say it's fake news, some might say it's satire. Regardless of the case, there may be some very truth to it, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about these things. Antarctica has really become a major subject in recent, well, in fact, in the last year, even more so. There's been every kind of conspiracy theory that it is a place for a massive alien base. This is where aliens go at. We know of the one of the former military officers, Byrd, who fought a conflict near Antarctica and lost a lot of men, claiming that there were flying discs, flying saucers coming out of the Antarctica, and just there's all kinds of evidence that is legitimate evidence that clearly seems to show that the Antarctica is certainly a base of some sort. The Germans also, under Adolf Hitler, had a base down at Antarctica. There's all kinds of things that are going on in this region of the world. As you can see on your screen now, this is the book of Enoch. I was reading in the first book of Enoch, chapter 18, and this is where the angel Uriel is taking Enoch and showing him some very interesting things. We go down to say verse 4 and begin there. It says, "And I saw the winds which turned the sky and caused the disk of the sun and all the stars to set. And I saw the winds on the earth which support the clouds. And I saw the path of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of heaven above. And I went towards the south." Okay, so he goes to the end of the earth. And he speaks about going towards the south. "And it was burning day and night, where there were 7 mountains of precious stones, and 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south."
Enoch was the great-great-grandfather of Noah, the 7th generation of humans after Adam. He played an intermediary role between the fallen angels that had rebelled against the Lord and the righteous angels who served and did the Creator's bidding. Angels totaling 200 descended from the heavens and took women of their choosing, interbreeding with them and giving birth to a race of giant humanoids known as the Nephilim. The corrupted angels further taught humanity various tricks and crafts, and soon the earth became reddened from the blood of its creatures. War broke loose, and the natural order of things came to an end. And Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets, and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semyaza taught enchantments, and root cuttings, Armaros the resolving of enchantments, Baragial taught astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, Aragiel the signs of the earth, Shamsiel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. This episode in human history culminated with a heavenly battle. Righteous angels fought against the corrupted ones, and the latter were defeated. As punishment, the Lord had cast them away in Tartarus, and there is reason to believe this prison is located somewhere in Antarctica. Due to the successful role Enoch played in this conflict, together with his untainted nature, the Creator spared him of his earthly demise and took him directly into the heavens to witness the forthcoming events. Enoch's words are very suggestive, hinting at Antarctica as the spot where the corrupt angels were confined. And I saw the wind on the earth which supports the clouds, and I saw the path of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of heaven above, and I went towards the south, and it was burning day and night, where there were 7 mountains of precious stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. And those towards the east were of colored stone, and one was of pearl, and one of healing stone, and those towards the south of red stone, and the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of the Lord of Stibium, and the top of the throne was of sapphire. The second passage describes Enoch's journey south, where he witnessed a curious phenomenon where the sky was burning day and night. This could be interpreted as the southern hemisphere summer season in Antarctica, where there is daylight for 24 hours. The burning sky phenomenon refers to the aurora australis, or the southern lights, which are visible from high southern latitudes in Antarctica, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, and Argentina. Regarding the 7 mountains, Mount Vinson qualifies as the central mountain described by Enoch, as it is the highest in Antarctica. It does indeed have 6 other adjacent peaks, but they don't match the alignment depicted unless we shift Earth's axis of rotation. The pole shift hypothesis speaks of rapid shifts in the relative positions of the modern-day geographic locations of the poles and the axis of rotation of the Earth, thus triggering calamities such as floods and tectonic events. According to the research conducted by Sir Charles Hapgood, such brisk changes were a common occurrence in Earth's history, and proposes that the last pole shift had happened about 11,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. Was this the time when the biblical deluge took place? Was Antarctica transformed from a habitable land into a frozen, inhospitable desert of ice as a result of this pole shift? Were the corrupt angels imprisoned at the summit of the iconic Mount Vinson in the Antarctic Sentinel Range? Or maybe where the Wilkes Land anomaly is located. It is still unclear based on the above clues, but dots are slowly joining. The locations of the above-mentioned sites don't overlap, but they both present a veritable riddle awaiting to be solved. From what we know from the Book of Enoch, the angels are still alive and struggling someplace underground until the time of the redemption. The Book of Enoch further reads, "And like a spirit questioning me, the angel said, 'This is the place of the end of heaven and earth. This is the prison for the stars of heaven and the host of heaven. And the stars which roll over the fire, these are the ones which transgressed the command of the Lord from the beginning of their rising, because they did not come out at their proper times. And he was angry with them, and bound them until the time of the consummation of their sin, in the year of mystery." With this last passage in mind, it could be that Antarctica's riddles are too complex to unfold, and are instead awaiting this mystery year to arrive. Its frozen prisoners shall return to this land to wash their sins in the battle with the evil that is to come.
And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. Job 1:7.
The world consists of vast cultures with stories that constantly connect their gods with the inner earth. And not just their gods, but reptilian races of hybrid entities. We're talking superhumans, strange animal creatures, or what the Book of Giants refers to as monsters.
When you're dealing with the areas around the world where so much myth, legend, oral tradition, and belief, contemporary belief, there's always almost an embracing of the underworld.
The earth is actually dynamic. By that, what I mean is that, we all go to work every day, we get in our car, we are driving over a shell under which, according to the Bible, there is supernaturalism, there are entities, there are creatures, there are beings.
If you were going to hide something and keep something secret, there's two places to do it. One is in the deep, deep oceans. The second place is a labyrinth, a network of tunnels and areas which go deep underneath the earth.
There was truth to this idea that this race called the Vril-Ya had been existing under the earth since the days of the Great Flood in the antediluvian world. In fact, the belief of the Vril-Ya and of the power of Vril was actually so prominent among German occultists that it gave birth to a secret society, one of the most notorious secret society involving the Nazi regime, called the Vril Society.
The Nazi expedition to Shambhala originally started in Greenland with the Edda. The Edda were ancient Nordic writings describing a hollow earth. They went there to see if they could find further details or information. This was the top of their agenda. They had to find this opening. And the next thing you know, they had the Neuschwabenland expedition to the Queen Maud Land area of the Antarctic. It's what drove them. It was a religious belief that drove them to cordon this area off and claim it for their own.
When I read Admiral Byrd's description of things that he saw and how it felt going into this abyss type of opening, but it also was a long time ago, and we've learned a lot about quantum physics since then. We've learned a lot about how these types of things would work, and there are too many descriptions in there of things that he saw that line up with current quantum physics understanding.
The underworld of our people, very similar to the Cherokee stories, the Creek stories, the Maya Incan stories of underwater panther and these underworlds where there was completely different civilizations that lived under there.
We know in the Bible that the Watchers, the angels who kept not their first estate, according to Peter, are kept in chains in Tartarus until the judgment, kept in darkness until the judgment. Tartarus, in Greek mythology, is as far below Hades. It's not Hades, it's as far below Hades as the earth is below heaven. That's where the Watchers, according to Peter, have been confined.
And what we're finding out is that the fallen angels and demonic entities have been molding the views. They've been molding the cultures, and hyper-intentionally, they've been molding the religions of the world. They've been literally priming the world for the greatest deception of all time. And we are fast approaching that time right now, according to the Bible.
Ich behaupte auch, diese große Pyramide ist das älteste Bauwerk der Erde überhaupt. Ihr Alter beziffert sich nicht auf die lächerlichen 4800 Jahre, die die Ägyptologen anhand von unsicheren Angaben errechnet haben. Ihr Alter muss nach Zehntausenden von Jahren beziffert werden und reicht wieder eine ferne, ferne Zeit zurück zu einem Kulturvolk, das lange vor den Pharaonen lebte und ein Wissen besaß. Die Geschichtsforschung weiß nicht von einem solchen Kulturvolk und muss derartige Angaben als Fantastereien zurückweisen.
The Nazi scientists and researchers may have been the first to begin to question traditional ideas about our past history, but certainly are not the last. That history for them was only recently pieced together by so-called modern science based mostly on assumptions and the new position of evolution. These views were in direct opposition to anything previously accepted from the biblical view, which by then was automatically excluded from any perception of archaeological and paleontological evidence. Recent discoveries called oops art or out-of-place artifacts should require any thinking person to reconsider our past as defined by these modern scientist priests. The conclusions, however, are today mirroring the Nazi outlook of ancient gods from outer space as our creators. Just as controversial as UFOs are, and perhaps just as covered up, here are a few examples. We find multiple areas with dinosaur footprints along with human footprints. We have found batteries in Babylon. A fossil human footprint was wearing a sandal with a squished trilobite underneath. This sea animal should have died 40 million years before man, according to the experts. We have man-made metal balls that were found in rocks supposedly 3 billion years old. An aluminum wedge was found with mammoth bones Aluminum is a man-made and not even been refined until the 16th century. We have an Egyptian wall relief that many believe is a model of a light bulb. We have a broken rock with a metallic object inside. X-rays reveal a spark plug, supposedly more than 10,000 years old. The Ashoka pillar, inscribed with a date of around 700 years BC, is made from welded plates that do not rust or wear down in the weather. We have a forged steel hammer found in shale said to be hundreds of thousands of years old that contains no carbon but chlorine in it. This poor Neanderthal is said by some to have died by a bullet hole in its skull. Clean entry and evidence of an internal explosion of the skull on the other side. There are Egyptian winged objects, and any 10-year-old will tell you these are toy jets. Understanding the Genesis 6 account of the flood and what really happened provides a more logical answer to these mysteries as neither gods or aliens, but a contamination and intrusion of mankind by the enemy of God. In the Nazis' unorthodox beliefs, they may have found some buried truths that all Christians need to understand because they are going to impact all of our lives very soon. Let's take a look at their specific occult beliefs. As mentioned in an earlier segment, Blavatsky's theosophical ideas and promise of an elect called the Aryan who would one day rule the world was well received in Europe in the late 19th century. A Gnostic society centered around her beliefs found in her book, Secret Doctrine, became a powerful influence into European society. Membership grew and included many of the who's who of society, including intellectuals, scientists, political leaders, and the old money European aristocrats. These became the active members that would soon influence much of the European continent. This society was called the Tula Society, taken from the name of the Aryan capital Ultima Thule, which they believed was inside the earth. The Tula Society actually fostered the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. Combined with several other important occult lodges like the Vril Society and the Order of the Black Sun, they formed a powerful political movement inspired by their occult religious beliefs. The Vril Society was created after one of the first real science fiction books written in 1871 by Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton. He was known worldwide for his book, The Last Days of Pompeii. He was a member of the neo-pagan English social order, the Golden Dawn, and a higher-ranking Freemason and a Rosicrucian. His book told the story of a young man who lost his way in a cave and encountered an advanced subterranean civilization. The Vril Ya was the name of the mystical power utilized by this inner earth society. These were described as large Caucasian people with the strength to control a strapped-on device of wings that enabled them to fly. This could be alluding to possible angels. The Vril power was developed through their minds and transferred into a crystalline staff that each member carried. They viewed mankind on the level of pets and had a lifespan lasting for centuries. They would someday rise from the earth to reclaim the surface. If this sounds familiar to you, Disney Pictures produced an animated movie adaptation from the same source called Atlantis. Occultists never received this book as fiction, but rather truth veiled in the guise of fiction. The final result was that the Nazis believed and acted upon these strange ideas as part of their agenda. The Order of the Black Sun derived their name on the same occult beliefs that the inner earth was provided with a life-sustaining environment by an inner central sun called the Black Sun. In today's terms, it would be as absurd as the Masons and the official Star Trek fan club merging to form a powerful political organization. The strangest thing is the fact that it actually did happen. Their occult-inspired beliefs inspired them to quest for these truths completely unorthodox and outside of the box. In this, apparently, they had found some realities. Under the occult directions of Heinrich Himmler, the SS formed the Ancestral Heritage Society known as the Ahnenerbe, sort of a Nazi Academy of Sciences for the SS. The Ahnenerbe can be best described as a humanities think tank with guns. They had an unlimited budget. They could work on any project to pursue any theory using any resources available. This included using humans without fear of accountability. In other words, they had a license to kill. But they had to produce results. Failure to do so would mean loss of their position and profession, imprisonment, and even their own lives. The Ahnenerbe worked in two main directions of study. The first well-known one is that of ancestral heritage. They wanted to prove that Aryan as superior with a past world dominance. According to occult scholars, anywhere the swastika or runic language was used was proof of an Aryan presence. In spite of their emphasis on the white race, they did view the Asian and Orientals as spiritual Aryans because of their religious beliefs of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism reflected the inner earth's belief system. History claims that this whole process was a fabrication without any substance. I claim that by biblical standards, the Nazis were actually tracing the seed of the serpent without knowing it. While the Nazis believed they were tracing their Aryan heritage and the golden age of the gods, they were actually tracing a part of a truth based on the biblical seed of the serpent, the Nephilim, and the pre-flood world. Serpent without knowing it. While the Nazis believed they were tracing their Aryan heritage and the golden age of the gods, they were actually tracing a part of a truth based on the biblical seed of the serpent, the Nephilim, and the pre-flood world. Their beliefs went back to Atlantis as the origin of their Nordic gods, which they believed were extraterrestrial. Yes, Nazis believed in ET. Only their perception was that their gods came from a literal origin from outer space as our creators from the Aldebaran, which is part of a 7-star system in the constellation of Taurus, the bull, associated with ancient Baal worship. It is interesting to note that NASA's first deep space mission was to the very star system of Aldebaran. NASA, of course, was created by captured Nazis at the end of World War II. The other direction of the Anunnaki took was to regain the secret knowledge of the Vril used by the Aryan in their golden age of the gods. They believed encrypted in legends and myths, and even the ancient ruins themselves held secrets that could unlock to produce new super weapons and reconquer the world for their promised race. In the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Anunnaki were depicted in ancient ruins in Egypt. They globetrotted the entire worlds, looting museums and digging at ancient sites and mystery sites. This occult trail started in Iceland and Greenland and ended in the Antarctica, as we shall see in the next segment. To understand the way these Nazi scholars understood such out-of-the-box or unorthodox beliefs, we will just take one example from thousands to explain. Mercury, the legendary hero, a symbol and an element. Mercury was in Roman and Hermes in Greek mythology was the swift messenger of the gods as well as the god of commerce and travel. The symbol of Hermes' staff shows a disc on either end of a central shaft with 2 intertwined serpents with wings of flight above their heads. The Nazis saw this intertwining as indicating a vortex implosion principles understood by Victor Schauberger, who was made to work for the Nazis' agenda. The dual discs on the shaft represented the electromagnetic energy generated from the Mercury through a vortex implosion as symbolized by the intertwining serpents. This corresponds with the serpent myths as described through Hindu religious beliefs. The final result produced rapid flight, as represented by the wings. Although you might think this strange, this is the very methodology used which led to the new technology the Nazis were claiming to have obtained through this unorthodox view. The Nazis may have constructed mercury plasmic gyros. This system used an electrified mercury vapor. Further evidence of an unusual use of mercury was discovered in April of 1944 when an ill-fated submarine, U-859, left Germany and was sunk off the Straits of Malacca in Indonesia. This sub had a cargo of 33 tons of mercury. This was a strange cargo in such a huge amount and being treated as an important military cargo. In 1944, mercury was used for thermometers and switches with no known military purpose. Some sort of unconventional use can only be explained to this strange cargo. It has been speculated by David Hatcher Childress and Rinaldo Vesco in their book Man-Made UFOs that the ship was headed for a base in the Antarctic, as one of many that headed in that region, all during the late 30s and 40s. Another curious note was the death of Jack Parsons. He was the American rocket scientist who invented solid rocket fuel. He died in a fire while working with mercury, and yes, he was involved with the occult societies that had Nazi connections during the war. There does seem to be quite a bit more about mercury than just switches, thermometers, and mythology. This is only one small example of how the Nazis approached legends and myths and attempted to extract a physics from them. Understanding these specific occult beliefs, you can see how the Nazis were driven to search out for an opening to a hollow earth because this was pivotal in obtaining their goals. They believed the hidden masters, the White Brotherhood, described by Blavatsky and mirrored by Eastern religions as the ascended masters, avatars, and Lord Maitreya, were in fact Aryan blood relatives of the surface Germanic tribes. In fulfillment of the prophetic return of the Aryan in Blavatsky's theosophical religion, they had to find an opening. Now we shall see an occult trail that led to a supernatural encounter which was actually described in the Bible. The Bible gives us a prophetic understanding of what the Nazis were really up to. The prophet Amos describes a group of people fleeing the wrath of God for the sins committed against God and his people. Most commentators say this is just a metaphor of extreme heights and depths that man cannot reach, and showing God's power over all things and extremities. If this is a literal prophecy, however, then we would expect that in some time in human history there would be a group that would actually try to do both extremities. This first ever attempt was made by the Nazis with their occult agenda. The Book of Enoch, although not canonical scripture, is quoted by Jude and at least can provide some added historical insight to the biblical stories in Genesis. The secrets given to mankind were the physics from the eternal realm which fallen man had no business knowing or understanding. This information was given during the Genesis 6 intermarriage between heavenly beings and mankind, which produced the legendary giants and human hybrid offspring. These, of course, were the same beings worshipped as the mythological gods from the Golden Age. All of this was supposed to have been destroyed in the flood. However, much of the knowledge was remembered and passed down until the next great act of rebellion, the Tower of Babel. When God told mankind to disperse and multiply, they band together and built a tower. Traditionally, you have been taught that this act was to literally climb into heaven. And what, pull God down from the tower? The tower was built in a valley. What actually happened is quite different from the fairy tale. Translators added the word reached unto on a wrong assumption. The surrounding words more properly indicate that the tower was containing the information to be used at a future time when man could literally breach or open a portal into heaven. The builders even had a contingency plan in case they were dispersed by God before they completed the tower. Each group would build memorials that would encrypt the information within. We call these the mystery spots that exist all over the world and date back to the time around the Babel incident. Other texts of Scripture indicate that one man would lead this group to unlock the meanings and apply them for the purpose of once again banding together as one, or better put in today's term, a new world order. These are the eyes of the one Daniel mentioned that had a fierce countenance. And he also understood dark sentences, meaning to have a supernatural revelation to forbidden or hidden knowledge. One man leading the Nazis did just that, and many other prophetic fulfillments. Next we will see this trail, and that ends with a plan of a deception placed upon the entire world. The Icelandic expedition was motivated by the belief that the local ancient text called the Edda may hold the key to finding the location of the survivors of Atlantis, their blood relatives and hopeful allies. Some thought they may be the descendants of the people living in Iceland and Greenland. Others thought they became the mythical Hyperboreans who now live in a hollow earth. Whatever their conclusions they left off next to Tibet. In several expeditions to Tibet, the last at the request of Buddhist monks, yielding many relics and ancient texts as desired evidence which the Nazis brought back to Germany. The Tibetan monks saw the Nazis as a fulfillment of their own prophecies, as the ones with the Shambhala power that would complete the final Dharma cycle of the Aryan and usher in a new age of enlightenment. With open arms, the Nazi conducted ethnic studies, earth magnetism tests, and were given access to the cave systems within the Himalayas, forbidden to others for centuries. A sacred volume of ancient texts said to be from the time of Atlantis, or from a biblical point of view, pre-flood texts, were brought back to Germany. They even enlisted over 200 monks as technical experts and SS officers who were taken to Wellsburg Castle, which was Himmler's SS Anernavi Nazi esoteric think tank. Soon afterwards, there was an announcement in the German papers that with the help of the Tibetan monks, the opening to the hollow earth had been discovered. This is when the 1938 expedition to the Antarctic began. The Nazis cordoned off an area of Queen Maud Land and renamed it New Schwabenland. Since that time, submarines from Germany established a regular route there. During the war, German submarines caught or captured in the areas discovered an overload of people. What should have been a normal crew of 8 to 12 men had as many as 50 people in them. It has been speculated that a colonization was taking place. A statement from Admiral Donitz may have confirmed this. As the head of the German Navy, Donitz told young submariners in school that if the war took a turn for the worse, they had already established a safe harbor to relocate to. At the same time activity increased in the Antarctic, German nationals began buying properties all along mountain ranges all throughout the world, but concentrating in the West, in South America, and even New Mexico, Arizona, and California. The American OSS was following this occult trail and was well aware of the suspicious activity. At the war's end, the American OSS was confronted by many surprises and a great mystery, which were all connected to the Antarctic and a hollow Earth. These mysteries, when added up and using little imagination, tells us a very remarkable story. At the end of World War II, we found many of the largest modern German submarines missing from their pens, never to be found or seen again. As the Allies rushed toward Germany, the U.S. allowed Russia to take Berlin without dispute. We sent General Patton's group to Prague instead. As author Joseph Farrell points out in his book, Reich of the Black Sun, we were more interested in the Nazis' own nuclear bomb program and other developing technologies than we were an outward show of victory. We let Russia enjoy that part while we had bigger goals to complete. Prague was one place we knew was a key location for real war booty. This led the Allies to Nordhausen, where we found amazing discoveries. Nordhausen was a huge underground complex built into the mountains where the Nazis continued to manufacture and develop the new superweapons Hitler spoke of. Traditional history tells of captured rockets and jet aircraft, but until recently has always conveniently left out the other discoveries. Circular and triangular aircraft in various stages of development were also discovered. I have seen these for myself on U.S. archived microfilm. They are real. Although anything captured was conventionally propelled, they were still like nothing anyone had seen before. What also had been alleged to have been discovered were blueprints and plans of alternate energy sources and methods of propulsion, such as vortex implosion engines, electromagnetic gyros, and other advanced forms of technology. In other locations, experiments in high altitude and low temperature effects on the human body were also discovered, suggesting the preparation for a space program. I have seen these microfilm documents and have them in my own collection. Cloning technology was also discovered from Joseph Mengele and other experiments in the death camps, as well as mind control. This caused a near panic to retrieve these important informations and discoveries and its creators and keepers of these secrets before anyone else. Operation Paperclip, Lusty, and Sunrise went into action to obtain these objects, people, and documentation. These programs ultimately became America's undoing, and I believe is even prophetically mentioned in Daniel 11:43 through 45. To get the details, I describe them in my book. This search made the OSS aware of other mysteries. As recorded in Guinness Book of World Records, the largest unsolved bank heist ever was the entire German Reichstag Bank. This is not including the many caches of looted gold recovered by the Allies after the war. This would be like someone conquering the U.S. and upon entering Fort Knox they find it empty, with everyone saying they knew nothing about it. The mysterious fact is that the entire tangible national economy disappeared. That does not happen by accident. While looking for the scientists and engineers working on Nazi Black Ops type programs, some were found, but most seemed to disappear, just as the highest man in charge, Hans Kammler. They, like the money and submarines, disappeared never to be seen again. As part of the Lebenssturm, a eugenics program, many Aryan women and selected SS men were used as baby breeders to recreate the pure Aryan. With the largest disappearance in the Ukraine and other amounts from all other occupied territories, and I know this sounds incredible, but almost 200,000 people are unaccounted for. This does not include MIAs, POWs, and those executed in death camps. The Nazis were articulate in records keeping, and this is a fair estimation that seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. 2 months after the war, 2 Nazi submarines surrendered to Argentine authorities, who then hand over the crews to the American OSS. The crews said that they had just left the Antarctic, where they left supplies near a cave in the German area of New Schwabenland. The OSS kept the officers for the next 2 years for questioning. All this evidence just cries out, as incredible as it might sound, that an entire government and key individuals with a significant population relocated to somewhere else. The U.S. did not take this evidence lightly. We knew of the Nazi occult trail of exploration and backtracked their steps. This led us to dispatch our only expert on the Antarctic, Admiral Byrd, to the Antarctic. The public was told that this was a scientific venture to test military equipment in severe cold climates and to do further mapping and geological studies. The contingency to Operation High Jump consisted of 13 military ships, including an aircraft carrier, battleships, and a typical military operation. It also included 4,000 ground troops, a couple of PBY reconnaissance planes, and heavy military equipment. There was not one special-built research ship included. The group broke off into two groups and made a three-pronged military entrance onto the Antarctic continent, headed toward the German base 211 in the area they called New Schwabenland. They were outfitted for an 8-month stay. However, after only 2 weeks, they returned with the loss of many heavy equipment and planes. En route back, a ship-to-shore communication with a Chilean newspaper stated that Admiral Byrd told them that in the future we would have to contend with aircraft that could fly from pole to pole in a matter of minutes. There is no proof of this conversation, and it appears that a cover-up is in the process. Once back home, Admiral Byrd was taken to Washington, where he was sworn to silence and the whole matter kept hushed. Nothing else was ever mentioned in the press, and it became a non-event. Years later, Admiral Byrd tried to push Congress to use the Antarctic as a test site for our nuclear bombs. When in 1952, a month before the bill was to be presented to the floor for discussion, Washington is suddenly buzzed by groups of UFOs flying in a typical German formation. The bill was dropped, and soon afterward, the international policy on both Arctic and Antarctic circles was developed. 5 months after High Jump, our government officials were nervously searching for a last bastion of Nazis who may have fled with a technology that challenged their position as victors of World War II. Many sightings, including the Kenneth Arnold sighting, depicted UFOs that were identical to the captured Nazi documents. But the next event to happen took them beyond nervous to horrified. It was planned, it was prophesied, and it was the beginning of a new Nazi plan, Roswell.
And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
In this video, I will discuss about Antarctica and some other conspiracy that was popular 5 years ago before Flat Earth was booming again. Hollow Earth. Maybe there are something connected about these conspiracy. Before I go, don't be shy to subscribe my channel. Thank you. What was the reason behind Obama's secret trip to Antarctica? What was the reason for CIA Director James Clapper's simultaneous visit to Australia? Why did Russia's top religious leader go to Antarctica? There has been a virtual media blackout about these highly unusual trips made by officials in Russia and the United States. There are a couple of sources that cited Obama traveled to the southern tip of Argentina before crossing the Drake Passage to Antarctica. Indeed, Obama's secret trip comes at highly unusual time. It's almost on the heels that the visit by teacher Kirill of Russia. Kirill met with Pope Francis and having in Cuba less than 1 week before he departed for Antarctica. Media sources describe the meeting between the two religious leaders as urgent. Nothing like this has happened since the 1054 AD schism that separated Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. Why an urgent meeting between these leaders was called after a millennium of never meeting with one another is a mystery. The mainstream media reported that the meeting between Francis and Kirill was meant to condemn persecution of Christians around the world and to foster ecumenical dialogue. But again, becomes at unusual time, because 4 days after this meeting Kirill arrived in Antarctica and performed a religious ceremony blessing the land and water surrounding the continent. He praised the barren lands of Antarctica as, quote, a model of an ideal humanity. Kirill also said the following, quote, Antarctica the only place where there are no weapons, No military activity, there are no scientific studies focus on the emergence of a new means of destructions. It is a perfect image of humanity and a testimony of the fact that people can live like this. No border, no weapon, no hostile competition, that they can cooperate and feel as members of one family. The reason I find Obama and Russian visits to Antarctica very strange is the following. There was another country, another regime, that visited Antarctica just before a Great World War started. The Nazis led an expedition of 33 members, including scientists, to Antarctica just before the start of World War II in September 1939. Their expedition to New Swabia lasted from December 1938 to February 1939. It is known that the Nazis took thousands of photos using airplanes during this expedition. They also reels of colored film, which was rare at that time and very expensive to produce. The regime was clearly looking for something in Antarctica. But what was it? What were they there for? Two earlier expeditions to Antarctica by the Nazi were also very alarming. They were intent to map out the terrain of the continent using hot air balloons for aerial footage. The Nazis even attempted during these two expeditions to walk across the entire continent and map out its landscape. It's still unclear why they engaged in so much surveying. Let us go back to World War II and listen to an interview given by an American naval officer named Richard Byrd. Byrd was stationed and lived in Antarctica for some time. Byrd astonishing claims about the continent that it could be the key to a future controversy that would erupt between various countries. Not merely regarding the issue of resources, that precious metals, mineral deposits, and even uranium have been found in Antarctica. No! Richard Byrd seems to suggest that something else was there.
And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America.
Richard Byrd verified that Antarctica wasn't about resources, but rather that the Nazis had established secret bases for some reason. Perhaps they were protecting something. Operation High Jump, coordinated by Byrd, which included US, Russian, Australian, and British forces, was meant to close in on the Nazis' strange operations in Antarctica. We'll return to Richard Byrd later on in this video. The logo for the Nazis' third expedition to Antarctica shows that they were interested in a particular portion of the continent called New Swabia. You can see on this emblem that there were lines drawn to bring your attention to an exact coordinates, ending on a particular target. Perhaps the Nazis were hiding a secret in plain sight, that they had located something. Were they pointing us perhaps to a hole that existed into the earth? A pathway into the center of a hollow earth. There is evidence to suggest that the Nazis believed in the hollow earth and held to an understanding that perhaps there was a passageway to the other side. While hollow earth is not popular these days, it was during World War II. In fact, it was suggested that most of the top Nazis officials believed in a hollow earth concept. Many within Nazis' pop culture also believed in hollow earth, including German writer Cal Newport. In a book called Between Science and Fiction, The Hollow Earth is Concept and Conceit, the author documents that Newport began what appeared to be a cult following of hollow earth believer in Germany at the time. The idea was that the earth was shaped like an eyeball. A portal leading into it where the North Pole was located, and another portal leading into it where the South Pole was located. The inner portion of the earth is hollow. Likewise, the eye has an entry where blood is pumped into it, but the actual eye globe is hollow, filled with a substance called aqueous humor to protect it. Toward at the end of the eye, a lens is located that assembles a massive lens in an ocean. At the center of this landmass is another hole, the pupil. Strange resemblance between Hollow Earth and a human eyeball is unmistakable. Antarctica was a point of entry into the very pupil of the Earth. Interestingly, many Christians throughout history have held to a view of a hollow Earth without realizing it. That's because for many centuries Christians have viewed hell as a place underneath the crust of the earth, a place of fiery torment where condemned souls go. The Nazis, however, believed the opposite. That perhaps this place inside the earth was for condemned souls but a place where the master race, their ancestors, dwelled. Nazi belief in the location of the master race was based on a new age of philosophy to had a profound influence on their philosophy and as a terrorism. Helena Blavatsky suggested that inner earth was not a place of hell, but a place where the master race lived. Admiral Richard Byrd is arguably one of the most controversial on the subject of Hollow Earth. The truth is that Byrd organized a mission called Operation Hitjump to stop Nazi ambition in Antarctica. Even after World War II had ended, it was officially classified as a reconnaissance mission. Yet several members of Operation HJump died mysteriously.
And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
The United States was on a mission to find whatever the Nazis hid in Antarctica. Shortly after Operation Hitjump was completed, the United States began to promote the idea that the Earth was a solid ball with maybe a small core of magma. No entry or exit into the inner Earth, settlement or secret bases underground, no potential escape for the Nazis. This idea came into full force using the US's newly created NASA. Byrd, who had begun to speak out about Hollow Earth towards the end of his life, died approximately 1 year before NASA was launched by the US. Certainly if this was merely Nazi claim with no other substantiating commentary or research, then we could just simply disregard it. But it is the fact that Hollow Earth map had been drawn for centuries. Famous members of the Illuminati including Edgar Allan Poe and Jules Verne alluded to Hollow Earth in their writings. That there was a world underneath the crust that we stand on. What of the most striking affirmation that an opening to another world was identified was made by Richard Byrd himself. Byrd's diary was mysteriously published in 1990 by a company called Inner Light. In the 68-page publication, Byrd suggested that a land existed beyond the Antarctica where he was stationed for many years around the time of World War II. He made two mysterious bombshell statements in his diary. One was that he was ordered to keep silent about everything he had witnessed in Antarctica, and two, that he had witnessed the land beyond the pole, the center of the great unknown. Let us not forget that thousands of top-secret scientists in Germany seemed to disappear overnight at the end of the war. Some people believe that they escaped to the United States in something called Operation Paperclip, but some other are a bit more suspicious, thinking that perhaps these scientists made a quick exit off of the face of the world, literally to the hollow reaches of the Earth. Perhaps into the very inner quarter and to the location where another race of beings dwelled. Did the Nazi go into the ground when the time came for their demise? And is this now the plan of the elite when World War III begins? Is the route of an escape in Antarctica?
And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the slope from Little America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
Many ancient cultures shared similar beliefs in a sacred place in the north, often described as a harmonious paradise. The Norse would call it Agartha. For Hindus, it's referred to as Paradisia. The Greeks knew it as Hyperborea. The Celtics called it Avalon. Buddhists call it Shambhala, and in the Bible, it's referred to as the Garden of Eden. That's just a few of the names. In fact, this place has been dubbed the Land of 1,000 Names. At the center of this paradise is the Axis Mundi, also called the Cosmic Axis, World Axis, World Pillar, Center of the World, and World Tree. This is said to be the connection between heaven and earth. Here is the Norse depiction. We have Yggdrasil, which is the Tree of Life. This is Mount Meru, from Buddhist, Jain, and Hindu cosmology. It's a central world mountain that reaches high into the heavens, and resting above it is the North Star. In the Mayan cosmology, there is a central pyramid. Same theme with the Inca cosmology and the Navajo cosmology. So you get the idea, and of course this is fascinating on its own, but here's where it gets crazy. In the 1500s and 1600s, many maps were made that depicted 4 large islands in the Arctic region surrounding the North Pole. The most popular map with these Arctic landmasses comes from 1595 by Gerardus Mercator, where we can see a large black mountain called the Rupus Nigra, surrounded by a great whirlpool into which 4 powerful rivers flow. These rivers divide a massive landmass into 4 distinct islands. These islands were said to have been written about in great detail in a lost book from the 14th century called the Inventio Fortunata, which itself also references much older and similarly lost work. Suddenly, in the mid-1600s, all traces of the 4 Arctic lands, the Central Mountain, and the whirlpool had vanished, not to be seen on any map thereafter. Currently, we are told that there is no land at the North Pole, but instead, a floating ice sheet that expands and contracts from season to season. Here's a short clip from a documentary claiming to be going to the North Pole.
Arriving destination 15 feet, 12, 10, 2. North Pole, top of the world, guys. Top of the world. We'll get that in a minute, Jake.
How cool is that? So what do you think? Is the real North Pole being hidden from us? Are they hiding land at the center of the Earth? Is that why we are told about Santa Claus at an early age, and it's conveniently related to the North Pole so that when we inevitably find out that Santa Claus is total BS, we also dismiss the North Pole? Not that it doesn't exist, but you know, we just kind of forget about it along with Santa Claus. Sure feels that way. And as usual, the truth seems to show up in plain sight in Hollywood movies. I just watched the new movie The Dark Tower, based on the Dark Tower book series by Stephen King, and sure enough, it was all about the Axis Mundi.
You draw with a good hand.
I just don't know what this is.
It's a map. My father showed me a map like this once. Inside the circle is your world and my world. Many others. No one knows how many. The Dark Tower stands at the center of all things. And it stood there from the beginning of time.
Dark Tower equals Rupus Nigra, or the Black Rock. And in the movie, a young boy goes to another dimension called Midworld, and the only reason he's able to get in is because, quote,
his shine is pure.
That's a prerequisite in a lot of the North Pole paradise mythology we were discussing earlier. This magical kingdom will only reveal itself to believers pure in heart, What does this mean? It means that you must shed all your past traditional beliefs and open your mind and heart to the possibilities of the invisible worlds beyond our senses of reality. The Western world has been conditioned to see first, then believe. But in the search for Shambhala, you must believe first. Just like in the movie Doctor Strange.
You're talking to me about healing through belief.
You're a man looking at the world through a keyhole, and you've spent your whole life trying to widen that keyhole, to see more, to know more. And now, on hearing that it can be widened in ways you can't imagine, you reject the possibility.
No, I reject it because I do not believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief. There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
You think too little of yourself.
In the Wonder Woman movie, the guys are on the ocean, it's dark and foggy, then suddenly they poke through to see a beautiful hidden land. On Kong, Skull Island, there is a hidden land surrounded by a perpetual storm system. When the people finally get there by way of helicopter, you can see the Aurora Borealis. So there we have a hidden land in the Arctic connection. On the movie The BFG, Big Friendly Giant, there's a scene where they jump through a water gateway to a hidden land. And again, we see the Aurora Borealis in the scene. On the video game Uncharted 2, we get this cutscene.
That's amazing.
Chloe, I know where that is. Let me use your bag. Which means... the entrance to Shambhala must be right here. Here it is, Elena. The secret entrance to Shambhala.
In the movie The Golden Compass, there is a magical dust at the North Pole that connects the world to a parallel universe. That movie, The Fountain, was a weird one. Have you ever seen that? Had some domed world, tree of life symbolism. Here's one that I didn't catch until recently, but during the credits, the end credits of the first Thor movie, it has the mountain reaching the heavens, depicted in the Yggdrasil Norse Tree of Life cosmology. Of course, that one is easy. Thor is obviously full of Norse concepts. My favorite part is when they are fighting on the Bifrost Bridge, aka Rainbow Road. If you don't get the joke, then you need to play some Mario Kart. Now, this next movie is by far my favorite on this list. It's called The Children Who Chased Lost Voices, known as Journey to Agartha in the UK.
It is said to be a place where any kind of wish can be fulfilled, even resurrecting the dead.
Is Agartha a real place?
Who knows? It could just be an old legend.
It's very straightforward, where a little girl journeys to Agartha, and I highly recommend this one. The story and the animation are just perfect. Visually stunning masterpiece for sure. So I'm gonna get out of here. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I have to say that I barely scratched the surface on this. A channel called Flat Earth Paradise covers this topic in great detail and inspired me to make my own video. I'll have a link for his channel in the description. Thanks for watching.
And from there, I went to the middle of the earth and saw a blessed, well-watered place, which had branches which remained alive and sprouted from a tree which had been cut down. And there I saw a holy mountain, and under the mountain, to the east of it, there was water, and it flowed towards the south. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it was parted and became 4 heads. Beautiful in elevation is the joy of all the earth, Mount Zion, in the far north, the city of the great king.
What's exciting about this? Well, they're all facing north, right? Yeah, so? The needle's naturally drawn to the Earth's magnetic North Pole. Meaning, if we follow the compasses north, they should lead us to the gate.